months ago now, the mayor issued what's called the Broadband Challenge. There were 3 goals in this, and this was basically to residents as well as businesses, asking what would you do with gigabit connectivity in certain areas of the city. There was a request for information put out that enumerated those goals, and the primary goal was and is economic development. So gigabit speed networking at radically discounted rates from what it costs today to get such a thing. In about 12.5 what I call innovation zones, high growth technology areas of the city, and I can enumerate those. That was the first one. And then with that new open fiber ring, you can do all kinds of things. And the 2 next one, maybe of more interest to this audience, is using that fiber ring to pull networking into neighborhoods. Okay, so much in the way that Gigabit Squared is proposing doing this on the Mid-South Side. That was the second goal. The third goal, you get the opportunity to promote free wireless in public spaces. But all of this rests upon the fiber network that we have asked to be built. Now, I won't go into the details. The city brings a lot to the table in this regard: unused capacity, access to assets and infrastructure, and of course, much to your all chagrin, we're opening up a lot of roadway in the next few years for sewer and water main repair, and that gives a no-cost opportunity for us to put down, well, no cost to the fiber provider to access conduit that we're laying there. So the update is that the RFI closed 10 days ago. There was a piece in Cranes about this yesterday. We got 24 responses, and they're very good. They run the gamut from sort of niche technologies that have piqued our interest, things like using robots to pull insulated fiber through the sewer system without having to rip up the street, to end-to-end plays from some of the folks who are actually in this room right now, who can do all 3 of those goals. So what we're doing right now is that the reason this was a request for interest rather than a request for proposals is because we really didn't want to be prescriptive about how it was achieved. You know, advances in microwave backhaul mean that what an initiative like this looks like in 2012 is different than it would have looked like even in 2008. So we've taken, we're reading through all of them again and again to sort of isolate where ideas are kind of coalescing, what areas of the city, what technologies, what the respondents are actually asking of the city. And that will inform how we actually go to the request for proposal to do this. So, I mean, the short answer to your question, Drew, is a very, very positive response about what we thought we would come in, but probably more creative than we thought.
You know, one of the things that has become clear in your emphasis today and elsewhere is that business is a key driver in economic zones. Do you want to speak a little bit more about how the city identified those 15 zones that there was 12 or 15?
Right. So the idea here is very much the model that Laura and the University of Chicago are using. It's where, is to start with demand and say, where are the areas that would most, right out of the gate, be able to use gigabit connectivity. It's, much as I hate to say it, as the Chief Technology Officer of Chicago, it's not my house, right? I don't even, at this point, know what a resident would do with a gigabit connectivity. But I do know what small businesses, what small startup businesses, not the IBMs of the world that can, pay for gigabit connectivity, but the businesses that are dotting River North and starting to dot Fulton Market, technology startups. So the criteria was, where is there existing demand or places that are on the cusp of demand? Ravenswood Corridor, Pilsen Corridor, all the areas around universities are an obvious one, right? That isn't because we're not interested in residential. It's because in order to get that fiber built, you have to go against to the lowest hanging fruit as your nodes, and then once you have that ring, you can do like Gigabit Squared is doing, pull off of that aggregated demand, in this case the University of Chicago, into areas where you're flipping the equation on its head. You're providing supply and the demand in the hopes that will be a platform for innovation. And that's the rub with what we're asking the providers, right? We're asking them to turn their business model a bit 180 degrees, right? Our friends from AT&T in the room and Comcast will, if we can show demand, 9 times out of 10, they'll go to it. And that's what we're trying to do with these innovation zones, and then leverage that to build further.
We began this process basically in 2009 to not answer the question so much, how do we get poor people using computers, but really to respond to Karen Mossberger's research from 2009 that showed that that geography, education, race mattered in terms of broadband usage and the types of usage, and that the barriers seem to be more related to, first, cost, second, difficulty of use, and then sort of a larger category of sort of maybe not interested, which when you dig deeper might have to do with other issues related to privacy concerns, concerns around parents having young people using the computer, etc. And so when we were given this opportunity, for those of you who might know, and Laura, we're going to use Laura's names quite a bit, one of the things that LISC Chicago has done is something called the New Communities Program, funded in large part by MacArthur and others, where we worked with a set of neighborhoods very closely over time to have them do community-based planning, comprehensive planning to think through what is the vision for their neighborhood, how do they want to improve quality of life, and then provide seed dollars to implement that vision and build that local capacity. And so we did not look at this opportunity to say, how do we put more computers in front of folks? We really started off by asking neighborhoods the question, how do you want to improve your quality of life, and how can technology or broadband be a tool towards that? And so the result of that was a set of plans and recommendations that were very comprehensive in nature, and spoke to the need for tech organizing. That is, you do need real human beings out there building a social network to connect seniors, to connect vets, to connect the underconnected plans. So it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, which we were grateful for. We had the baseline data that helped inform our strategy from Karen. MacArthur provided the resources to then, evaluate our process of doing it. And now we have new research coming out that indeed a comprehensive community-based approach really seemed to improve broadband usage in these neighborhoods above what other comparable neighborhoods have done. But I really credit that both to the research we had to help, have our neighborhood groups deal with, well, how do we deal with cost? How do we deal with lack of interest, et cetera? And then the comprehensive platform of our work before that were the relationships to build off of.
What is the next step for the smart community, Susana? What can the research help move forward, or what independent of research needs to be done next to help these and other communities advance further?
Sure. Well, again, to quote Julia Statue, I like to do quite a bit. You can't demonstrate forever. And so I think what we are looking to do is to continue to be partners with the City of Chicago. The point of a demonstration was to sort of do a proof of concept. Is this a good way to get broadband adoption? Is this a way to create opportunities for neighborhoods to want to use technology for civic purposes? Is it a way to get them positioned to have economic development come out of broadband usage? Is it a way to improve education and violence and other things? And so I think we have a body of real on-the-ground knowledge and experience. We've been trying to do independent fundraising to keep some of these components in place because we knew the BTOP funds would go away. And we're going to continue working with the City of Chicago to figure out how to extend the learning from the demonstration in a way that complements, I think, what the city's looking to do with broadband infrastructure. Because if we could get price down, plus the things I think we've learned in the demonstration, I think the City of Chicago could be a world leader in this.
Wonderful. Well, John and Susana bring the city perspective. Mark, as the head of ISTC, you're a statewide organization. Would you speak a little bit to the role that research and data and metrics play in your efforts, your work?
Sure, thank you. And I'll give a quick just overview of the Illinois Science Technology Coalition for those of you who may not be familiar with us or our work. We are a member-driven, nonprofit, public-private organization that increases science and tech investment in the state. So we play a very unique role in linking the state's universities and federal labs with key industry partners and government to leverage our strengths and assets for maximum impact. So we do that really in three key ways. One is that we have a lot of sector-specific projects that we advance with our partners to really leverage, again, very key areas of the Illinois innovation economy that are poised for growth. We also function in a role of increasing federal investment into the state, so where there are opportunities to align, again, state and local, to think about, and regional, to think about how we're bringing in additional investment into the state when there are federal opportunities. And third, we serve as a advocate, increasing visibility and awareness for science and tech and its importance in our economy, as well as making sure that that science and tech has a voice both in Springfield and in DC. So we do a lot on the sort of education side and getting to sort of the way we use data. What's been a very effective activity for us really through the last year is the Illinois Innovation Index, which hopefully some of you are aware of. It was a partnership that we have with CMAP, Rural Business Chicago, and the Chamber, Chicagoland Chamber, to really think about what are the core elements of Illinois' innovation ecosystem, how we measure that, and think about, knowing, kind of let the data speak for itself where we are, but also where we ought to be going. So over the last year, we looked at different very core sectors, or really metrics, including, VC investments, the R&D capacity we have in the states, tech transfer, exports, patent production, STEM degree production, and a core piece to what we put out as well was an addition on broadband, really on how it is connected to economic development. And so what was interesting in that issue, and I think for those of you who hadn't seen it, we can certainly get it to the group, was that it really showed. One, the good news is that Illinois is steadily increasing broadband access to business and residences, and I think one of the most compelling data points that came out of that index was that the commercial internet subscribers, in terms of a proportion of total subscribers, rose from 14% to 21% from 2008 to 2011. So what it told us is that more Illinois companies, businesses, are using the internet to, innovate, to just finding customers and et cetera. The other key elements that it looked at included broadband adoption by household, connection speed, the use of mobile, and it also told us that there's more work to be done as well. I think particularly in underserved areas of the state. But more than anything, I think and what I think we've seen, and even me in this role that I joined, is that broadband is discussed and thought about more now as a key indicator of any state's innovation economy. So the index gave us a way to really showcase and highlight and give some visibility and some also press interest in where we are as a state and where we're going. Good question. I don't know that it did. I think one of the things that where you mentioned a lot of the very, very key sectors for us to be thinking about. I mean, in Illinois, energy is, and smart grid, we have sort of a landmark opportunity in the state, almost $3 billion over the next 10 years in upgrading the grid. And a key piece to that, is customer acquisition. And without broadband, you really aren't able to take advantage of those opportunities. And certainly, on what we're hearing a bit on the telemedicine side, obviously a key sector as well when you think about other areas and underserved areas of the state. I would also mention too what was an interesting piece, just to pivot a little bit, was the open data, and I know it was mentioned from some folks in the room that we have advanced statewide, which certainly the city and the state, and John can talk more about some of the things the city's done, has really led by example here in making data accessible online, putting up data sets, and thinking about how then you in making that accessible, translate that to digital tools that can be used from either developers, the entrepreneurial community, other community members, about how there could be some civic applications and ways to make sort of open source and things like that more the norm. So we've launched this pilot initiative with 4 communities: South Suburbs, Rockford, Champaign, and Belleville. And it's been, I think, a great way to get these communities really thinking about how they use, first making data accessible, and then how it's utilized. And I think to link up with just kind of whatever in this room is interested in is how that access really plays into whether it's the entrepreneurial community, the student community, small businesses, and others that have access to the data.
It's actually worth asking John to maybe what impact have you seen open data have on investment or the climate for engagement in broadband here in Chicago?
I don't know that open data itself is a driver for broadband, except in the sense that what it makes of city government, it turns city government into more of a platform than a provider, in the sense that most of the value-added applications, like being able to see where the snowplows are, or tracking your bus, or all open data, were developed by third parties. not the city. So this is a different relationship than the city. You put your money into the government, you get a service out. This isn't that, right? This is the data as platform, government as platform, and then the community built on top of it. The community can't do that without ubiquitous connectivity. If you think about what just the ubiquity of cell phone networks plus open data with bus tracker and train tracker, it's changed the way, it's materially changed the way the transportation takes place in the city of Chicago. The bus ridership is way up when you don't have to wonder about where the bus is coming. And that is the confluence of an open data strategy, ubiquitous network access, and utility. So, I think that when we're talking specifically about open data as it relates to broadband connectivity, we move into the world of Karen Mossberger, right? Which is survey data. Where knowing ever more granularly, I think it's at the intersection level with Karen's work, who's connected, who isn't, and how they're doing it, helps inform it singularly guides how we architect the network that the city is responsible for.
It's actually a wonderful example of the access and the open data making a bus service more useful in a way that it wasn't when you couldn't rely on.
Well, and just one other point about the access. Free wireless in public spaces is not so much about letting you be able to, read the New York Times while you sip your latte in the park. That's great, but it's really about taking the interaction with a city government away from even your iPad or your computer and moving it out into where you actually interact with the city, which is the city. So, what these free wireless areas will do is enable us to network enable public objects, bus shelters and, signage and things like that allow the interactions to happen away from the computer. I think in not too many years we will think of the term e-government, which already seems kind of quaint, even more so, right? That I'm interacting with my government on my computer. You interact with your city government, you shouldn't even really be thinking about it, right? If you need something at that bus shelter or at that parking meter, you should be able to request it then and there. And that's a consequence of these ubiquitous wireless networks.
Well, it's not to mention, Illinois, as I said, we were fortunate. We received the second largest FCC pilot grant in the nation, only second behind California. And I think the value of the hardware that went along with that created job opportunities by having the production of that, the installation of that was just building the pieces. Today, we have 3,100 miles of high-speed broadband at gigabyte speeds with capability to be ramped up dramatically beyond that, and the uses that we didn't even think about 4 years ago. Today, telemedicine, telehealth, avatar technology, cloud data repositories, cloud packs for storage of radiology. We have a facility in the central part of the state who transferred pediatric echocardiograms for children. Their time to do that went from 3 hours to 3 seconds. That is a game changer. We need to be able to connect physicians' offices, healthcare clinics, etc., at 10 megabytes to be able to move them back to a statewide health information exchange. They don't need a gigabyte, but they do need readily available, affordable connectivity that doesn't have a lot of cost on the interior side of that organization. And I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface on the whole telehealth and telepresence services, which I think will be as much of a bandwidth consumer as we initially thought all of the radiology might be. So if you're in that situation where you could potentially be sending all of your radiology exams and you'd also like to talk to the cardiologist and have them interview a patient at the same time, whatever we thought was going to be bandwidth speeds, I think we're going to get a very different perspective. We've just begun to, through our NOC provider who really monitors the network, we begin to look at bandwidth demand by day, time, etc., because we want to get an idea of what really happens in a hospital in terms of those ebbs and flows, and how do we make sure we build the infrastructure that is going to facilitate us on longer term, so we don't end up 5 years from now with the same bandwidth slow speed issues we had 5 years ago.